Hi friends, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to be talking through all the books that I want to read in February. I am being very ambitious, and that's probably not the wisest idea considering it's the shortest month of the year, but we're gonna give it a go anyway. I never intend for this to be a super strict thing, but these are just my intentions, the books that I am really hoping to get to this month. Some of them are higher priority than others, and I think it's just fun to share. Before I fully get into everything, I do want to start with an update about my 25 and 25 book challenge. I picked 2 books from that challenge to read last month, and I was only able to finish one. I will talk about that in my January wrap-up video, but I am carrying one over into this month, and that book is Inkheart by Cornelia Funk. I don't think I'm quite halfway through this book yet, but so far I am enjoying it. This book is about a girl and her father, both who are huge book nerds. The main character's name is Maggie, and her father is very good at binding books. So he is often rebinding books for people, repairing books. And it's a surprise to Maggie that he never reads aloud to her. We find out pretty quickly that there is a reason that her father doesn't read aloud, and it is because he has a magical ability that when he reads aloud, at least from a particular book, things come out of the book, and sometimes things go into the book unintentionally. I don't know a lot about his ability yet. I'm still in that part of the book, but there are people who are after this particular book, Inkheart, and there are people who are after Maggie's father specifically because of this ability that he has. The characters in the story have really come to life, and I'm pretty captivated by the world, and of course as a book lover I love all of the bookish aspects as well. So I'm very excited to keep going with this and to finish it this month. That being said, I do still need to read 2 more books from that challenge this month if I want to keep on track, so I'm going to go ahead and pick those out now. And as I mentioned in that challenge, I decided to physically wrap all of those books, so it's a surprise every month which ones I pick. That being said, because the rest of my TBR is pretty ambitious, I do want to go for more mid-sized to shorter books this month, and potentially something that's easier to read or that's different from the rest of the books that I've chosen. So it'd be really nice if I got like a middle grade or YA, or perhaps even one of the nonfiction. But it's going to be a complete surprise, so I'm going to take you over to my stack and we're going to pick them out together. Okay, so this is not the most beautiful presentation. As you can see, because I chose a sparkly wrapping paper, the tape did not stick very well, but I promise I didn't peek, so I'm going to kind of look. I'm feeling maybe this one. Let's just kind of take that out of there. Hold on. Okay, let's pick one from the stack. So let's just go with this one right here. All right, I've got the 2 books here, so I'm gonna go ahead and unwrap them. They are both paperback. I'm gonna start with the skinnier one. Okay, On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness by Andrew Peterson is my first choice. And honestly, I'm not sure if I want to read this one this month. It is a middle grade, so it should be pretty easy to get through, but I am worried that it's going to give me the same vibes that Inkheart does. Not necessarily that the stories are the same, but I think they'll kind of have that same whimsical, adventurous quality to them, but we'll see. I'm going to give it a go. In case you didn't see my 25 and 25 book challenge, this book is meant to be a very whimsical, magical tale about a group of siblings who go on an adventure across the sea, as the title suggests, and they are on a quest to fight the impending darkness or the forces of evil within their world. They're going to meet lots of fun characters along the way, as well as some magical creatures. This is supposedly filled with songs and poetry, and given that Andrew Peterson is a poet and songwriter, I love that he's intertwining that into his story. And I do think this is going to be a really good time. This is the beginning of a series, and that's also intimidating to me right now because I have a lot of series that I need to finish. But I think I will actually enjoy reading this one. Okay, let's go ahead and open the next one. I had a feeling that this is what this was going to be. So, book 2 is Vicious by V. Schwab. This is an adult fantasy, but V.E. Schwab's writing is not too intimidating. I think she's really great for someone who's trying to step into adult fantasy. This book is really popular, and I am excited to finally get to it, especially because she's coming out with a third book in this series. And this book follows two college roommates, Victor and Eli, who are both incredibly gifted, and together they decide to start a research project together concerning near-death experiences and extraordinary powers, believing that the two are linked. At some point, they start actually experimenting, and you might imagine where things go from there. I believe that they do gain some extraordinary powers, and this ends up bringing them to a place of conflict. I believe one of them believes in kind of the superiority of people with extraordinary powers, and I think the other one maybe wants to get rid of anyone who has extraordinary powers. I believe the story is filled with a lot of morally gray characters, a lot of interesting questions, and I think it's going to be dark but very fun at the same time. So yeah, that is the second book that I need to read for the 25 and 25 challenge. So these two I need to prioritize this month. Okay, let's get on to the rest of the books that I hope to read in the month of February. And I'm going to be honest, now that I've opened those, I honestly do not have a lot of faith in my ability to actually read all of these. So we'll just see how the month goes. We'll see where my mood takes me. We'll see what happens. Okay, let's go ahead and start with my book club pick for this month, and that is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. A lot of people have told me that this is their favorite Emily Henry book, and because it's so bookish, I imagine that I will feel the same way. But this is about a literary agent named Nora, whose sister convinces her to take a break from her cutthroat job and very busy life in the city to spend a month with her in a small town in North Carolina. Nora reads a lot of books as a literary agent, but she's never really felt like the main character in her own story. And her sister Libby is hoping that a month away will finally change that. But things do not go as planned when Nora continually runs into someone from back home in the city, the brooding editor Charlie Lastra. They do not have a great track record, so you can imagine her frustration when she keeps running into him time and time again on her month away. But I believe that her barriers start to break down, and then a little romance gets kindled, and this sounds like a really great hate to love slow burn. In fact, it almost gives me Pride and Prejudice vibes, the idea of this brooding character that she hates who keeps showing up again and again. Definitely gives me Mr. Darcy vibes. Even though it's the month of February, I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily in the mood for a contemporary romance right now, but Emily Henry never fails to suck me in, so I'm sure once I get into this book, it's not going to take me long at all. The next book on my list is a reread, and that is Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. I would really like to read this as well as the new release in this duology that comes out a little later this month, Rebel Witch. That one was available as an add-on for Book of the Month, so I went ahead and ordered that. So it should be coming in the next couple weeks. But this is a book that I read last year and really loved. Unfortunately, I feel like I've forgotten a lot of the details, so I'd really like to reread it before I start book 2. But I'll briefly tell you what this is about. This is about a girl named Rune, who on the surface appears to be a vapid socialite, but when she's not out in society, she is a vigilante called the Crimson Moth, and she took on this role because she lives in a place where witches are oppressed, captured, and killed. And at the beginning of the story, we see the capture of her own grandmother. Rune herself is a witch, but she hides that from all of the people around her. But even though she's a witch in hiding, she's still very loyal to the witches. And so she goes undercover to help witches escape persecution until one day when things do not go as planned. Her cover is almost blown, and she isn't able to help someone, and she realizes that she needs more information than she has. So she decides, in order to throw people off her scent, in order to gain more intel, she is going to seduce and start dating the head witch hunter in her society, and that would be Gideon. Gideon, however, has intentions of his own. He learns that the Crimson Moth has been using Rune's ships in order to help witches escape, and while he's not sure if Rune herself is the Crimson Moth, he assumes that the Crimson Moth is at least connected to Rune, and so he also is hoping to gain more information by dating her. So this is definitely a fake dating book. that somewhat quickly turns into a romance, but there's obviously a lot of conflict because Rune is worried about Gideon finding out her true identity, and Gideon knows that his brother is actually in love with Rune too. I remember getting completely sucked into the world when I first read this book, and when I wasn't reading it, I was thinking about it. So I'm actually really excited to dive back into it again, and of course to read the next book. So hopefully I will get to both of those this month. The next 2 books that I'd like to get to this month are graphic novels, and they would be volumes 3 and volume 4 of the Cursed Princess Club. Volume 4 just came out at the end of last month, so I'd really like to reread volume 3 before I dive into volume 4. But this series was originally published on Webtoon, and I do sometimes read it on the app itself. It's actually really fun to read it that way because there's music, and you kind of get to see some of the comments that people have left as they read each chapter. But because it's a series that I love so much, I also wanted to own the physical copies. And actually now the Webtoon is completely behind a paywall, so I'll probably mostly be reading it physically from now on. But this series follows Gwen, or Gwendolyn, a princess who is very loved by her father and her family. All of her siblings are exactly what you would imagine a prince or princess to be. Very beautiful and graceful. But in book 1 of this series, Gwen realizes that there is something different about her. She is not conventionally attractive, and she has a lot of dark energy around her. That being said, she is super sweet and very easy to love if you can look past the surface. In book 1, we see Gwen come to the realization that she's different, and in a moment of heartbreak, she runs away. And she encounters a group of other misfits called the Cursed Princess Club. From there, we see her go on a journey to love herself. There's a lot of funny situations, a lot of adventure as she becomes friends with this group of misfits, as well as trying to figure out how to fit back home again with the rest of her family. There's some romance, there's a lot of humor. And overall, this is just an incredibly charming and heartwarming story. So I'm very excited to reread this one and to read the next one in the series. And if I'm being honest with myself, that's already ambitious, so I don't know if I'll really get to the rest of these, but I do want to share a couple more. The first is Where the Library Hides by Isabel Ibanez. And I'm including this because I already started it. That being said, I wasn't totally sucked in yet, so this might be one that I hold off on and try again in the future to read. But I loved book 1 in this duology, and I was really excited for this. And I think now that the cliffhanger was kind of resolved, I slightly lost interest and got distracted by another book. But I'm still very intrigued to figure out what else is going to happen, especially with the romance. So I am really excited to read this one. I just don't know if I can prioritize it right now. In fact, I might see if a friend wants to buddy read it with me. But if you're not familiar with the story, this is the sequel to What the River Knows, which is a book that I highly rated last year. It is considered a young adult fantasy romance, but I would say the fantasy is very light in the story, and it's more of a historical adventure romance maybe. But this story follows Inez, who has always dreamed of becoming an archaeologist with her parents. From the time she was young, her parents have gone off on these adventures in Egypt, discovering secrets and finding artifacts from ancient Egyptian tombs, and she's always been fascinated by Egyptian culture and the pharaohs of Egypt. Her parents, however, do not let her come along, and instead she is living with some relatives in Argentina. That is until she gets a message telling her that her parents have died or gone missing, and she decides to go to Egypt herself to meet with her uncle, figure out all of the logistics, and maybe figure out what actually happened to her parents. From there, she secretly tries to join her uncle's crew and joins an excavation, all the while trying to discover what really happened to her parents. Unfortunately, she continually gets foiled by Whitford Hayes, a young man who works for her uncle, and who just really gets under her skin. And the whole time you're reading that book, you're wondering, is this tension going to turn into something else? And I have to say, it's absolutely delicious. The vibes of this story are really giving Mummy, and it was so atmospheric and beautiful. I love the way that magic was woven in, and I am really excited to get to this book. We'll just have to see if it ends up being this month or not. I am going to quickly mention the Obelisk Gate, which is the next book in the Broken Earth trilogy. I read the 5th season last month and I really loved it. I'm going to talk about that more in my January wrap-up, but this is the next book and I probably will not have time to pick this up, but we'll see if I can wait. I am very intrigued about what is going to happen next in this series, so this is a maybe. I also recently celebrated my brother-in-law's birthday, and he really wanted to watch My Hero Academia, starting with episode 1 as part of his birthday celebration, so that really got me in the mood to read the manga, so I may also try to pick up at least volume 1 in this series this month. This one will probably be pretty quick, so I don't think it would be too challenging to squeeze this in. This is a manga about a middle school student who has always been obsessed with superheroes, but unfortunately he does not have any powers. That is until his favorite superhero decides that he is going to choose him to inherit some of his power. From there, Aizuku decides to apply for the UA High School, which is a school for budding heroes. But he is brand new to these powers and he doesn't know how to control them yet. I read this first volume, I think a couple of years ago, and I did really like it, so I'm excited to read it again with the story fresh in my mind and hopefully continue with this series throughout the year. I did say that I wanted to read more manga this year, so I think this would be a good place for me to start. Obviously, that's a lot of books. I didn't even count them yet. Let me see. That's 11 books. I do not think I can read 11 books this month. A few of them are graphic novels or manga, so that does help. Those are usually easier for me to get through, but that's still a lot of full-length novels. I'm going to try not to put too much pressure on myself and just kind of enjoy it. But I honestly am so excited about a lot of these books. And I think whatever I end up reading, it's going to be a really fun month for me. I'd love to know if you've read any of these books, what you thought about those books. And I'd love for you to take a moment to leave me a comment below and let me know a book that you are hoping to prioritize this month. With all that being said, I hope you have a great reading month in February. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. I'd love for you to subscribe. I love you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.